Welcome to the Middleton Select Board meeting, date September 3rd, 2024. The meeting's not recorded, so we do have some items to go through. We're going to start with the warrant article 2504. Justin?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and if it's all right with the board, I'll just take these in series because we have two sets before us. So warrant 2504 dated August 22nd, 2024 on the payroll side of things, totaling in at $635,607. I will note a little over $20,000 in overtime there on the fire side of things. Also an interesting one, $738 for Eagle monitoring. That's the inhabitant at the facilities project.
Our tenant.
Yeah, our tenant.
Are we collecting rent though?
No, they're delinquent. So on the bills payable side, $873,721. Some things that'll jump out there, about $35,000 for the DeBush water main project, which is ongoing. For the library, just under $11,000 for the purchase of books. They have to purchase a certain amount every year. It's part of a formula. And then on the school, towards the bottom, you'll see a big chunk there, $220,000 for their annual health insurance premiums. Rounding this one out on the bottom, facilities project 42. This one's a little bit lighter than has been typical lately at $142,000, mostly just project design and miscellaneous related expenses, little permitting fees and things like that. Additionally, you have on the second page warrant 2505 dated September 5th, 2024 for payroll $798,238, once again popping up overtime $14,708 on the fire side of things. And the reason that I keep pointing out that number, and I will continue to, is in so many words, by not funding additional staff, we're realistically not saving money. We're just dipping into the OT line. So it's, and needlessly creating scheduling stress. So I'll continue to point it out. Bills payable, $1.3 million, some big ones there, $132,000 for the Peabody Street Bridge, a little update on that project just after this. And then for police, the purchase of a new cruiser, capital item, $42,417. Facilities project warrant FP 43, you'll see larger and what will be more typical as we continue to draw this sum down, $1,339,106. Majority of that is construction expenses, pure construction, so putting in the footings, foundation, starting to go vertical with the concrete block, and then some pre-construction expenses, which are once again kind of administrative. So having just driven by that site, I'm shocked at how quickly they're making their way around the public safety facility. So that rounds out those warrants for this evening.
Okay. Any questions?
I'll move to accept warrant 2504 and 2505 and facility projects warrants 42 and 43 as presented.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And I'm an aye as well. Unanimous. Okay. Did everyone get an opportunity to look at the minutes from August 13th, 2024?
Yes.
Are there any questions?
So those couple of edits, those are the final.
Those are the final, correct?
Okay.
And thank you for those.
So I'll move to accept the minutes of August 13th open session as presented
second.
with amendments.
I'll second that.
Take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye as well. Okay, next is Town Administrator update and reports.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have been discussing, I want to say at a meeting maybe 5 months ago now, the proposition of forming a Friends of the Middleton Food Bank group, just given the sum of money that has been set aside generously donated. It's just over $200,000 at this point in time, and so we have been in conversations with Council on Aging, seeing what we need to do to formalize and kind of get that process going. So I just wanted to make sure folks were aware of it, and we'll have a more formal proposal coming forward in the next couple months or so. I have registered to renew my MC PPO designation. Those classes are going to run through this fall, so it's the Mass Certified Purchasing Officer. It's good for 3 years, and I'm set to expire in December. So good for me. I get to go through the renewal process. But it's important to stay current, just because I mean, pretty much every single thing that we purchase, as you all know, there are so many hoops and hurdles and stipulations. So it's good to stay fresh on that. MassDOT was in town last week for a road safety audit. We appreciate them taking the time to come out. They were specifically looking at the intersections of Route 114 and 62, an intersection we've had a lot of conversation about over the past year, right there in front of Memorial Hall, and also adjacent to where the development's going directly across the street, the 60 units and the commercial. So productive meeting. Thank you for the staff that attended. They do not have an update on the left arrow at this time, if that question was cooking, but I was talking with them about it today. So as a reminder, the Peabody Street Bridge will be closed tomorrow, September 4th, from 8:30 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. That's a full closure. We've been alternating sides over the past few months. This is a total shutdown. They're at a phase in the project basically where they can't alternate. They need to be able to do it in a shot. So we've been coordinating with public safety. Everybody's aware. We put it out on social media again just to remind people, and it's on the town website. So remind your neighbors if you run into them.
So will they stop it far enough back so people don't drive down and have to turn around?
I would hope that they'd put signage far down the road, but I'll double check with Paul Goodwin just to make sure. That would be awfully frustrating. Residents abutting the Mill Pond, who they were in at your last meeting, held their first resident meeting last week, so they're kind of taking it upon themselves to meet and coordinate those meetings. They have been communicating with us. I made a connection from a former community that I'd worked in, who was a president of a pond association. I made the connection with them for that group so that they can kind of learn how to form their own pond association and see what comes of it. So it seems to be productive so far. Transfer station stickers went on sale today. I don't have an exact count, shame on me, because I know you look forward to it. But a huge thank you to our DPW and finance team members for the work they put into that well in advance, just making sure it's a smooth rollout. We've started interviews for our administrative services position with some slots next week yet to be scheduled. We've interviewed a couple. There's a few more we want to reach out to just to make sure we're leaving no stone unturned there.
Justin, how many did you receive for applicants?
We received, I want to say, about 12, half of which have experience that I would consider, if not directly applicable, adjacent. So a good, that little bump that you all approved did make a difference. So for the planner vacancy, we have a couple interested candidates in that I think have some potential, and we're continuing to see and keep an eye on, see a few more roll in, and then we'll go ahead and do interviews later in the month. We want to make sure, doubly so this time around, that we have somebody that's has the right skill set, but is also a good fit for the organization and has a good, I guess, grasp on the needs of Middleton. So we'll keep you posted on that. I do know that previously, when we went through the process, I suppose it's worth mentioning, the select board formally appointed a search committee. If it's all right with the board, I would like to just reach out to those same folks as a working group at my request, just so we can kind of expedite that process, and it would be a working group rather than a posted public. Is that agreeable?
Any objection to that?
So it'll be the exact same process?
Format,
The
identical,
same-
yeah.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Middleton has,
And the planning board person is still on the plan? I know there was some changes.
yep, he is the chair now, but yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Middleton has received the GFAO Budget Award for its 4th year in a row, which is a really significant accomplishment, and I just want to acknowledge Finance Director Sarah Wood for that, and her team as well that she leads. It's not typical to get that every single year, and the amount of work that it takes is really something worth mentioning. Free cash has been certified, totaling in at $6.7 million for the general fund. I would note that that number is, in so many words, artificially inflated, similar to the prior year. It's a lot of returns from the investment on the money that we borrowed for the project, but as we're drawing it down at 1.5 million in a shot, per shot every other week or so, the return isn't going to be like that next year. So it's a good little bump to have, but it's not
Well,
typical.
you know what it was 2 years ago or 3 years ago, where that bump, it wasn't as,
Right. So, and I don't have those numbers directly in front of me, but you can see that it's going to start tailing off. The select board has been, or the select board schedule has been set through the end of the calendar year. I'd reached out sending an email, and that will carry you through to the start of the budget season, which I can't believe we're already giving that some thought. I also want to note that we added a placeholder date of December 10th, Tuesday, December 10th, for a special town meeting if it's deemed necessary by the board. So just a refresher, there's a couple elements out there, one of them being the MBTA communities. Part of that conversation we had talked about is if there's some type of significant change in circumstances, be it receiving a large grant or if some news shook down through the courts in October. And so we don't want to wait until the mid to late fall to suddenly scramble and get a date on the calendar. So people just try to keep that open if you can, keep an eye on it, and we'll make sure we're transparent if anything changes on that.
And there are no financial articles.
Not a single one. Yep. Thank you. 'Cause that would, for anybody wondering, that would affect the setting of the tax rate, and it's a huge
Yeah.
headache for our assessor friends. So there'd be no financial articles on that if it were to happen. And lastly, thank you to our town clerk's office. I believe I saw it. She's working back there. And our poll workers for all the effort that they put in the state primary election. And it's not just today, it's leading up to it as well, and early voting and everything else that comes with it. And they take it in stride with a big smile on their face. So thank you for all that work. And that's everything for now.
Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is public comment. Do we have anyone with public comment? Hearing none, we'll move forward. Okay, next on the agenda is Middleton Municipal Campus Update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So there's a couple items on here that came out of the building committee. They met Tuesday of last week. So one that I would like to put a spotlight on in your packet is Adult 2, which was the permeable parking. There was some considerable back and forth on that item. There's a map in there that kind of circles where it is. It's effectively overflow parking. And so, as you may recall in some of the other adults that you accepted, we had to accept them soon, it was early September, or that price wouldn't be held anymore. There was, as I mentioned, some back and forth on this specific topic, and I had requested that if it's determined a need, we revisit it later. My concern is that there appears to be an adequate number of parking, and I definitely understand that we rely on formulas for that. The overflow parking was more so on, the off chance a couple times a year if we have some type of large event or something at town hall and we find there's a shortage of parking. It's a little over $300,000 for those two permeable parking areas, which I personally feel like isn't maybe the best use at this point in time where we're at in the project. The other piece that kind of informed my decision to request putting it aside is that we can always come back and do this later. There's no critical path here.
At
So,
this moment.
yeah, by not doing it, it's not going to really impact us. I mean, the price of goods and services fluctuates, so it could go do it on its own, go out to bid, and it comes in a little higher, but you're not messing anything up by not doing it, basically. So
How much parking is there on the other lots combined?
I don't know that number offhand. But we had talked about that a little bit too, is if there's something in the public safety, worst case scenario, if they're holding like a regional public safety event and people got there a little later and didn't get to park right at the public safety facility, it's a really short walk from the town hall and there's a sidewalk there. So,
And what would that be, grass for now?
where the parking is not gonna go,
Yeah.
will stay grass.
So if there was some big event, you could.
Once or twice a year,
Yeah,
right?
you can park on the grass, yeah.
Park on the grass.
Yeah.
Is kind of where we landed. So I'd committed, and I want to read it into the record here, that if we do find a year or two into this that it's a constant headache and the parking is horrible and I was wrong, we can go back, we'll revisit this, we can hold, maybe hold some back for this exact purpose, and then after a year or two, release it if we determine it's not a good
I actually think that the maintenance of a permeable, non-paved parking area is gonna be different than the rest as well. So it's not just the 300,000 for something that may be maybe once a year, it's also the maintenance to it. So, yeah, I agree with that.
I really appreciate you just looking at it, not just rubber stamping, oh, this would be nice to have, that's, means a lot that you looked at it, it's a lot of money, we don't really need it, and you're recommending we don't do it, that's, I mean, to the taxpayers, that's huge, I think, rather than just say, yeah, let's do this, we have the money, that's great.
Thank you. I appreciate that, and credit to the committee as well. We're I think, collectively committed. Just because we have the green light to spend that money doesn't mean we want to spend it.
Right.
And our goal right now is, well, the primary goal is to have these two buildings that can serve the community well into the future. But secondarily, it's trying to protect that extra left over as much as we can, and to grow that so we can turn back as much as we can. And also credit to the folks over in public safety who are very much willing to bend on this one a little bit. So it's really collectively a group effort. But thank you. And then also you have in front of you proposals from Ockers for the security, closed caption TV system in the building. So the total amount that you're looking at, and I just want to make sure I'm getting this right, is the 692, 677 figure.
676
74,
and
yeah.
74 cents.
Close enough.
Yeah, thank you.
Little rounding.
So there was a lot of input on this one from public safety, and we appreciate them looking into that as well. Ultimately, this was an area that came in a little higher than they had originally anticipated, within the realm of I think just barely six figures over, which in the scheme of things isn't too bad. To the credit of our OPM, when we found out this item was going to be a little over, they did a good job of finding other areas, 5,000 savings here, 10,000 savings there. So really the net is pretty close to zero. We very much stay on budget. So if the board is agreeable, as proposed here, if they could just,
What's the rationale for 30-day storage instead of 2-week storage?
in terms of like for video,
Yeah, it says video storage 30-day storage. Why was 30 days picked instead of a lesser?
so it's a little bit of an industry standard, and I think part of the concern is that, say we notice something's broken or vandalized, but we didn't notice for 3 weeks, we can go back and check the tapes.
Do
So
we need to take a vote on that?
if you
Jess?
could just approve it as presented in the packet.
All right, who would like to make that motion?
So I'll move to approve the video storage proposal in the packet for 30 days. For 30-day storage.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I as well.
And do we have to take a vote on the permeable parking?
No. But just a reminder, it may come back, because I did make that commitment, if a need was
A
determined.
lot of things always come back.
Did we approve the parking canopies previously?
The canopies, yes, and the, do you recall, I have a few members here, did the canopies go through?
I believe so.
From my recollection, no, so I believe they went through, and then also the, we're not calling it a gazebo anymore, the pavilion.
Yeah, I remember
on the
we
front.
did that at a
Yeah.
previous meeting. I couldn't remember if we did alternate one. Okay.
And those were all in the same pot
Yes,
of, like,
yeah.
we had to pull the trigger
Yeah,
before
yeah,
September.
understood.
Okay. And that is everything on that item for now.
Okay, thank you, Justin. Next on the agenda is DPW Fire After Action Report with our Chief Lacoste. Chief? And thank you for doing a wonderful job. That could have turned out so much worse.
Evening, everybody. Okay, so, did everyone get a copy of the report? Briefly.
Yeah, if you could just run through it.
Yeah. So, August 14th, 2024, roughly 11:26 hours, we received an alarm notification for a fire alarm activation at 195 North Main Street. That was followed up with a phone call that I received from the building commissioner stating that there was a fire inside the building adjacent to a gas line. So we had a full response, which included our 2 engines, ladder, chief's car, and upon arrival, we found a moderate smoke condition coming from the main garage area, and we immediately called for a working fire, which basically there's pre-planned responses from neighboring communities to that incident, given the fact that there was a fire. Fortunately, on arrival, we did determine, or we noted that everyone had evacuated the building, which was fantastic. And the crews made an aggressive fire attack with a line, and they quickly knocked down the bulk of the fire, which was located in the main garage adjacent to a generator. Crews then went to the roof and checked for extension to the roof. Unfortunately, there was no extension to the roof, but there was considerable smoke damage throughout the building. And I think roughly 14 minutes or so, the fire was knocked down, and we then began the work of ventilating the building, trying to get the smoke out of the building, which was successful. We were on scene probably an hour and a half or so, and then we cleared the scene, and an investigation took place with fire investigation unit, and it was determined to be accidental. There were combustibles that were too close to the generator. So what we believe happened was the generator started up, the exhaust from the generator, the exhaust pipe was too close to cardboard, let's say, and it started the fire, tripped the fire alarm system, and then notified us via the municipal fire alarm circuit that we have in place at that location. So I think all in all, things went well. It was a quick knockdown. There were no injuries. Damage to the building was minimal, and everyone did a good job. So
Do we inspect the municipal buildings for fire safety precautions, et cetera? You mentioned that there's certain flammables
yeah.
stored too close to the generator. You mean, is that something that gets, building gets inspected periodically?
Long story short, that building should be part of the inspection process. I know that I'd have to look to see what the records were to find out when it was inspected last. So I don't have that answer. But that building would be susceptible, would be part of the inspection process. So.
Yeah, I think it's, worth kind of inspecting all of our
Yep,
municipal,
absolutely.
buildings, since, we go through inspections of private, buildings. We
Yep.
might as well inspect our
Good,
own and make sure we're abiding by good safety procedures.
Yep. As far as the response times, I did note the response times for the vehicles, and I know my car and the engine 3, which was the primary engine, we arrived simultaneously with a response time of just over 5 minutes from the time of alarm. Engine 4, which was the second engine on scene, had 1 member on board. It was actually Lieutenant Kessel, who was doing fire prevention at the time. So he responded back to the station, grabbed the second engine and responded. His response time was a little over 14 minutes. And then the ladder truck, which had 3 off-duty members, their response time was a little over 20 minutes. So while the car 1 and engine 3, their response times were decent, engine 4 and the ladder, the second and third piece of apparatus, that response time was long, unfortunately. And, I think it just paints the bigger picture of people live out of town, people respond from home, traffic, all the things we've talked about in the past. So, that leads to a longer response time for the additional apparatus that are needed at the scene.
In the
So,
first engine, how many firefighters were on it?
the first engine had 4 members, 4
4
on-duty
members?
members, correct. And had there been 5 members on duty, what we would have done is we would have 3 would have responded in the first engine, and then 2 in the most likely the ladder truck. So both apparatus would have responded at the same time to the incident.
And you had North Reading and North Andover?
Yeah, we had North Reading, we had North Andover, we had Topsfield, Danvers, and Linfield cover the station. That's all part of the working fire or alarm responses that we have, based on the officer's assessment when they arrive on scene. So, fortunately, we weren't on another call. If we were on a medical call, there could have been maybe 1 or nobody at the station. So fortunately, that was not the case. So we had a quick response. I think having the municipal fire service, that system that we have in place, was key, because what happens is if the smoke detector or the heat detector is activated, it trips the internal alarm in the building to evacuate, to notify the occupants that they need to evacuate, and then that then sends a signal through the red box, the fire alarm box that you see on the side of the building. That sends a signal to North Shore Regional, which they decode the box. They then notify us. So the notification is pretty much instantaneous, versus, some systems, it's central station, so it sends a dialer notification to, an alarm company. They process the alarm. They then call the dispatch center to report the emergency. So, the system we have in place worked well, like it was supposed to. So, which is good.
So what caused the generator to kick in? Was power out?
So it's my understanding that the generator is on a weekly.
Once a week it starts by itself.
It was just the test period. Oh, I'm glad that happened at 11 in the morning and not 11 at night.
Done it every week for 3 or 4 years.
What's it, diesel or gas?
Natural gas.
Natural gas?
So, I definitely would like to credit the employees at 195, I guess, first and foremost, for quickly realizing the severity of the situation and getting out of the building and encouraging their coworkers to get out of the
Could
building.
have been a lot worse.
Way worse. And also to commend Chief Lacoste and his crew. It's a unique dynamic for me personally, because I work with these folks day in and day out, but to get to see them in action, a little starstruck.
What was the town administrator's response time?
I wasn't far behind, honestly. I was decently fast. I don't have lights or sirens, but
You had to stop at the red light.
yeah. And then just a lot of phone calls and pacing around the yard nervously on my part, trying to not be in the way and sometimes failing. So, but really excellent work. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and
Please.
I think, all too often we see cases where people don't evacuate. Fire alarms go off and they just assume it's a false alarm and they stay in the building and, they stay put. But, the staff at 195 North Main, they evacuated. Everyone was out of the building when we arrived, which just makes our job a lot easier knowing that everybody's outside. So, so all in all, went well considering. Hopefully, doesn't happen again, but, it's...
And lesson learned, and maybe it should be something that's said to the other buildings until we're in the municipal complex, that if you hear a fire alarm, you need to get out. I know in North Reading, the fire department comes and we do drills all the time. We actually have a certain location for each door for that section of employees to meet at. And then there's a certain department head that takes count for who's there that day. And it's really a great system. And lo and behold, we did actually just have the alarm went off because someone overcooked popcorn. But we have so many new staff, and as I was getting my girls out, I was like, oh my God, we have all these new girls. They didn't know where to go. So, it was a matter of guiding them and telling them. But it might be worth us, maybe not doing a drill, but just letting, 49 South Main Street know that you got to get out. Don't sit there at your computer and work.
And there is a precedent for having some action plans for various crises that I think would be worth reviewing. And I know that, in the year plus that I've been here, I actually don't think we've ever discussed that in Memorial Hall. So I think that's probably a good next step thing as well, is where we maybe go designate a place to meet up outside the building and do all that stuff.
And then you can do an accountability of who's in on that day. Because everyone always knows who's in and who's out. So just as suggestion.
Gladly taken. And then once the dust settled of all of that, which definitely a large undertaking, followed by an even larger undertaking of trying to get temporary workspace up. And so we are joined by Mr. Paul Goodwin as well, if you'd like to come and sit up on the other side. Yeah. So
It's exhausted.
so once the fire's out, the next question was, all right, well, we need to talk with insurance. I reached out to the administrators and to the other responding communities and thanked them for sending their crews. But then taking a hard look at what do we need to do to maintain and continue operations. We went to some remote work for about a week. We rotated some of the administrative staff through the open desk in my office and forwarded the phone lines there just to make sure that for the public, if they were calling, by and large, they were getting somebody on the phone. I know some people got caught in the vicious cycle of voicemail loops, but we ended up hunting everybody down. And then it was getting trailers, 3 of them on site, which I would like to credit Paul for the extra effort that he has put in to make that happen as smoothly as possible. He's really kind of stood up from a leadership standpoint and taken ownership of, that building's not your building, but in many ways it is. And on top of everything else that the DPW has going on this time of year and trying to wrap up the building season before the snow comes, and then having this put on their lap on top of it, Paul's crew was out there the next day, out in the trucks, still going. They never stopped. They didn't miss a beat. And we have everybody down there on site in the temporary trailers through probably mid to late October, I would assume. So thank you for that. And then also trying to coordinate with the folks over at Maya, trying to figure out the extent of the damage, the cost, what it would cost the town, if it's going to be our full 10,000 deductible, but also the scope of what we have to do in there, removing anything that could have soaked up smoke, so insulation, any drywall, carpets. They're really going top to bottom in there. Pretty extensive process. And then also Paul walking the roof with them and identifying areas where through the course of their work, the fire department comes through and kind of really, trashes your roof in so many capacities, poking holes and looking for things. So just trying to find out the extent of that and what we need to do for a long-term repair. So it's a lot of extra work on top of the work that presently exists.
Was there any equipment in the garage that was unusable now that needs to be replaced?
Generator.
Well, obviously the generator.
Towable compressor and a lot of tools, a lot of hand tools. So it could have been a lot worse. Doug and his crew did a great job. It could have been so much worse. So kudos to them. And kudos to the police department as well, because we'd keep all the doors open that night, and they stayed overnight to watch our electric. We had a lot of expensive stuff in there. So they stayed all night to watch our stuff. The whole team has been really great for the whole project. It's been tough for everybody, and everybody's adjusted to it pretty well. A lot of phone calls, and just got the latest update just before I got here that Service Masters will be taking all the bigger stuff out of the offices next couple of days, and then starting to clean the fire bay where the fire was not. So we can maybe some migrate some of our stuff over there and actually function as a department. But, kudos to everyone at 195, but especially my department, the ladies and gentlemen who work there, and done an excellent job and just getting to meet it all.
And our IT folks also, I wouldn't want to miss them. Which unfortunately for them, I feel like the dust finally really settled from the cyber incident. They got everything going again, and then we had to call them and scramble to try to get everything set up over in the trailers, and then the work of getting it from the trailers back into the building once it's clean. So it's an ongoing process for them too. So this is really one that kind of hit every person on the team in one capacity or another. But we have a really good group, and so my takeaway on this one is gratitude. Just so we have such a good team of people that are willing to dig deep, that show up when you need them, and so thank you to everybody.
In a timeline to get back in the building, do we know?
There's a couple little tests where I won't bore everyone with the details, but the way to come back and stuff like that. But they're still thinking that timetable is realistic.
But you'll get access to the garage before then.
Hopefully. I mean, we need access right now anyway, just to get trucks, stuff like that. But once they really start cleaning, our access will be limited. But we're making it work. Everyone's doing a good job.
Our partners at Meld also, by the way, I don't want to forget them either. They've had open use of their bathroom and other things, and they were on site the day of the fire, and they're great neighbors per usual.
Absolutely.
So if you have to repair a piece of equipment, you're doing it outside?
Excuse me?
If you have to repair a piece of equipment, you're doing it outside?
We're sending it out as of now because we really shouldn't be in there, so to speak. But we're sending some of it out now, and I'm trying to make other arrangements as well. Because this is the time of year we maintain all the equipment for the winter.
The one thing I'd like to ask, Paul, is there anything in addition to the update that Justin gave us that you need to run the operations day to day? I mean, obviously the situation's not ideal, I get that, but is there any way we can help you? Can we help you?
I appreciate that. I'll let you guys know if there is. I text Justin all the time, just that we stay in pretty good contact that way. Again, I can't commend the staff enough, though. I mean, whether it's COVID or weather emergency or fire, they step up and take care of things.
So I'll come back around, I'd imagine sometime in early October. I think we'll have a good grasp on what the final timeline will be. We'll talk a little bit more about insurance and what comes out of that. That's still very much a fluid conversation that we're having, and we'll close it out then.
That deductible says 10,000.
Yep. So
And would we need to, the FinCom to do a transfer to cover that, or are there other funds to cover that?
we have other funds to cover it. So also I guess we'll throw Sarah in the mix too. A huge thanks to Sarah Wood. She was there for the financial response. I mean, this really hit every single person on the team in one capacity or another. So, but we'll know in terms of what they'll cover, what they won't cover, and we have an itemized list. Thinking of the hand tools and the inventory they have to take. There, we have crews that come in and do that, but it's still a lot of picking away at Paul's brain, I'm sure, and just trying to figure out what was actually there. And if anybody's ever been in that shop area, it's there's a lot of stuff in there. So, yeah. Great work, gentlemen. Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you both. Job well done.
Yep.
Okay.
No, you're good. Thank you. Have a good night.
Next on the agenda is Captain, actually, Chief Sampson can't be here, so we're gonna go with Captain Armitage.
There we go.
Not a bad thing.
Good evening, and thank you for the time. And if we need to, let me first offer Chief Sampson's apologies for not being able to be here tonight. He's feeling a little under the weather, and although we miss him, we thank him for not being here and risking us. We're here tonight to ask the board's support in our request to appoint a temporary, an acting detective sergeant. You may or may not know, you do know we have a current detective sergeant, Dave Arethusic. You may not know he's out on an extended medical leave, recovering from surgery. So he's expected to be out for at least a couple more months. And the chief and I feel, the department feels it's important to have a sergeant in the investigations division for a variety of reasons. One of which, and probably the most important, is that many of our cases come up to us through the patrol division, and there's often a decision that needs to be made as to whether that's the case the division will tackle, whether the detectives will take that, or whether it'll stay with patrol. And so it often is beneficial to have a person in authority, a sergeant, behind that decision-making process. I know the chief gave you, hopefully you have it, a letter of recommendation for our request. The request is for Detective Adam Messini to be appointed as the acting detective sergeant in David's absence. And I won't read the letter. I'll just highlight a few items from there. Adam's been with us since July of 2005, so he is one of the more senior members of the department. He's been a detective since 2017, and as I know you know, has really done amazing things since then, because the chief has been before you a few times to identify highlights from his actions and the entire division. He's written a multitude of search warrants and has actually become somewhat of a local expert in the area. There are times when the district attorney's office will actually reach out to consult Adam on some of the things that he's done. He's really developing an expertise in that field. Aside from the investigations, he, as part of the investigations unit, as part of his role as a detective, he does oversee the work of the patrol officers on special investigations, so he has had some supervisory experience in that regard, and he's filled the role of many specialized roles in the department, including being one of our sexual assault investigators. He's one of our field training officers, sort of mentoring the younger officers, and he's a longtime school resource officer, and I think still gets phone calls from the principals at times.
Sure do.
From a personal perspective, I could speak to Adam's capabilities. He often backs me up when I'm not available. As you also know, we were for a long time without our daytime sergeant, and so I relied on Adam on a multitude of times to back me up and handle things when I wasn't around and I needed a more senior person. He also backs me up at court as the assistant court prosecutor. So he really wears many, many hats and has proven himself very capable, and the chief and I are very confident in his ability to fill Dave's shoes while he's out. And thus, we would very much appreciate the board's support in the appointment of Detective Adam Messini to Acting Detective Sergeant Adam Messini while Dave's out.
I can't think of a better guy for the role.
Right.
so.
Right.
Right.
Collectively, we all agree.
Yep.
Madam Chairwoman, I would make a motion that this board appoint Detective Adam Messini as active detective sergeant during the
Okay.
period of the vacancy in that position.
I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, as well.
Thanks for
Thank
stepping
Thank you
up.
very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Captain.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brian.
Luck, Sergeant.
You didn't have to impress him. Of course I did. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, next on the agenda is the Award Essex D. Bush Water Infrastructure Contract. Justin?
So those bids came in on Thursday, and the engineer is still picking through them, so if it's okay with the board, I'd like to table that until your September 17th meeting.
So it won't delay at all.
Oh, be fine. Thank you.
When do you think work would begin?
Immediately.
Okay.
I may issue them an intent to award, just to let them get going on mobilization, and then you can, pretty much as soon as you officially approve it on the 17th, they'll be out there on the 18th.
Perfect.
Getting at it, so, yeah.
I like that, Bill. Okay, we're going to table item number 6, and we're going to move on to 7, which is review TEC proposal Route 114, 62 Boston Street through Memorial Hall parcel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So TEC has been working with us on this issue for several months now. The thought of doing this, the idea has existed for some time, and I think it got new legs when we were going through the Memorial Hall visioning session process, which led to my office reaching out to TEC and asking them, if we were to do this, what would it look like? And we went through several different stages, smaller things that we could do first to prove whether or not it was actually worth it. Traffic counts and things like that, where they did come to the determination that there's actually a surprising amount of folks that do take the turn down Boston Street onto South Main and then down Maple and vice versa, cutting across 114. And so what some folks have pondered is, if when the time comes that we leave Memorial Hall, if that building wasn't there, or if they shifted a lane to the left or right of it, could you carry that road straight through the parcel at the back onto Maple Street, taking pretty much all of those trips out of that zigzag? And so when I brought this forward to TEC, they came back with two solutions. One is what I just described, going through the legwork of figuring out if that's actually feasible, doing the engineering, and trying to figure out the hoops and hurdles, basically, of trying to take some of that land. I believe it's CPC owned land in the back, or preservation land in one form or another. The other option is taking a look at the existing infrastructure and seeing what we can do to maximize that, be it through shifting lanes or taking a foot here, a foot there. And if we did a full reconstruction, also taking into effect adaptive signaling, would that ease that traffic flowing in the current pattern enough that it's really not worth doing that road through at this time? And so with all of that, they came back with a quote of about $63 or $62 and change $1,000. There was a little overlap in the scope, and they agreed to bring it down to $56,200. And so, as I communicated to the board when I forwarded this report, my thoughts on this at this point in time are, we have a lot going on in that intersection. We talk about it a lot from several different angles, different projects, different grants, and it all seems to be coming around this point. And I believe TEC will hold this for some time. What I'd really like to see, though, hold this price, but what I'd really like to see is if we get that grant for that intersection. Because that might be a good place to tuck this work into that grant, or at least part of it. And so I wouldn't want to pay this outright or have them do this work if they're just going to do the work anyway as part of that grant, the Housing Works grant.
So let's take it under advisement.
We'll take it under advisement, exactly, thank you. And maybe see where it goes. I've heard originally the date for the Housing Works grant was October. Then I heard November. More recently, I heard sometime in September. So I've had some conversations. I'm not one to put in an application and just sit and wait. I like to badger people and make sure they keep us in mind. So we'll see. Maybe we'll know in September, and we can come back to this once we see what comes of that.
I agree.
I agree.
100%.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised that there's more vehicles than maybe thought that are actually coming down Boston and zigzagging, or coming up Maple and zigzagging over to Boston. I mean, it's a big cut through. From 128 to Route 1 and 128 to 95.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Justin.
Sure.
Next on the agenda is review of Minco Locust Street appraisal. Did everyone get a chance to read that?
So that one came in, I believe, the day after I'd sent out the packet. I forwarded it, and then you have a hard copy in front of you as well, because I don't believe it's in the packet on your computer. And so the biggest question, I think, not the most important, but the one people are going to wonder is there a value impact to this? And so, as a refresher for anybody just getting in on this, the town owns a fairly sizable parcel of land over on Locust Street. It was purchased a decade or more ago as part of the Howe Manning School.
August 2001.
There we go. So oh wow, so it's been several decades. As part of the Howe Manning School, they ended up rebuilding on the existing site, and that left this parcel. And so what my team has been tasked with is going out and trying to determine a value for that parcel so that the town can sell it as surplus property. Over the course of that conversation, the thought arose of whether or not there'd be value in trying to do some of the engineering up front, take away some of the question marks so that when it does go out in an RFP, it's a little bit more appealing and you get more responses. As part of that exercise, we reviewed what it would look like if you did 12 lots by right, meaning the way it's presently zoned. If you were to carve that out, how many lots could you realistically get, and what would the collective value of that parcel be, assuming you're doing it by right with 12 lots? And so that figure came out to $2,945,000. The second scenario was, what if it wasn't zoned that way, and if the town wanted to take a little bit more of a daring approach, not go for real true density down there, but find some more unique way to cut up those parcels that still preserves green space, but you're able to wedge in some more lots, something similar to a Brigadoon style neighborhood, which is very beloved in Middleton. And so the determination they came to there was, with 17 lots ranging from 10,000 to 16,000 square feet, assuming, this figure is assuming that a zoning change would have to go through, it would be valued at $3,140,000. So a difference of about $205,000 greater if you do the more smaller lot approach. Once again, I'd stress, at least from what I've seen and heard from this board, the money here isn't really the most motivating factor. It's a factor, but I think it's more so the opportunity, if I'm reading the room right, and what the board thinks the possibility is there in terms of setting the tone for future development in Middleton as we look to preserve the small town character, but also simultaneously try to address the housing crisis in a way that's appropriate for Middleton. And so with that said, I think I've talked about this enough. Do any of you care to add anything to that?
Just that, smaller lots doesn't necessarily guarantee smaller, less
Houses.
expensive houses. So, because there are many places where you still get 5,000 and 6,000 square foot houses on 10,000 square foot lots. So to achieve a more affordable housing, there would have to be, in the sale of the land, some conditioning of the size that could be built of housing. And when you restrict the housing size, you're going to lower the price. So, it's, so if, again, it's what are we trying to achieve? Maximize, the money coming in, or strike a balance between providing housing at a lower price point than the new housing that is being built elsewhere in town. So, to do that, we lower the,
Yes.
the price.
For me, it's to find that balance of affordable housing and not so many of the McMansions. This is, it's Locust Street, it's a nice part of town. We did invest in this parcel back August of 2001. We paid $1,750,000 for it. So land today versus 2001, we won't even get into the escalation of that. But in the RFP, I would definitely like to see a size restriction and probably maybe even a bedroom. I'd have to really think about that, but maybe a 3-bedroom versus a 4. They don't need 7,000 square feet. Let's try to get back to, we're trying to get affordable housing in this town.
Well,
So
the thing that you'll have to realize is
That's-
this is an area that will be septic. There's public water on that street, correct?
On,
So there is public water, so.
but no septic.
Yeah, yeah, even
I
though
mean, no
further down the road,
sewerage.
the sewerage, but the ability to tie this into sewerage would probably be more difficult than realistic. So smaller lots with septic, whether it's 3 or 4 bedroom, are gonna have a bigger dictate more of the size of the home there. I mean, I was looking at just the conceptual drawing. Now, I know these are just for purposes of valuation and aren't a guarantee of layout, but, I mean, the way I look at these is, I think a lot of these are looking like what, it's funny, somebody posted the other day, original brochure from Brigadoon back when it was built. And the vast majority of the buildings that were built there didn't have garages.
That's right.
I don't know if that's what's being proposed here, because these are much smaller lots and the way that the layout is. I mean, again, this is just for purposes of what size would be. So I agree with your comment, Costa, that smaller lot doesn't necessarily mean a more affordable building, but I will tell you, given how these lots are laid out and what sidelines and front and back distance are, these are going to be smaller buildings. They're going to be.
Well, you know,
And they should be.
I mean, you can end up with a 4,500 square foot building, 1,500 finished basement, 1,500 first floor, 1,500 second floor. You know, that's not a small, affordable house. So that's why, you know, and it's only taking up 1,500 square feet of footprint.
Perimeter.
So, you know, if the goal is to provide housing stock that is more affordable, and it's still going to be $1 million plus. So people shouldn't have the expectation it's going to be a $600,000 house. But it is way more affordable than the $2.5 to $3 million houses that are being built now on, you know, throughout town. So
This would still require a zoning change.
If scenario 2 was the,
I mean, you could still
The hope.
go through scenario 1, so it doesn't require a zoning change, and put a housing, you know, a building size restriction. You don't necessarily need to go through a zoning, it's just
Yeah.
that you would have 12 more affordable houses instead of 17 more affordable houses.
yeah, I think that would have, and again, that would have some effect on the likelihood of a sale price. For me, I mean, hey, the sale price is the sale price. That'll be a lump sum that will come into the town's coffers, but the bigger item is taking this non-taxable land and finally bringing it back.
Bringing it back on the tax
Onto the tax
rolls.
rolls of the town, and that's more of a, you know, more significant. I mean, even if this property was sitting on the tax rolls now, and was purchased and nothing else was done with it, that would be a significant. I will tell you, I was somewhat surprised by the 12 lots versus 17 lots, and, you know, a little less than 200,000? 200,000?
Yeah, about a
Yeah, a little less than,
Yeah.
195,000.
yeah, 195,000. I actually thought it would have been a little bit different than that, but, I mean, appraisals are appraisals, sale price is sale price, property's only worth what somebody pays for it.
And I just want to bring up, this isn't the first time I brought this up. This is an extremely desirable piece of land that you'll have many developers wanting to do this project, no question. And we have the town hall building, which we've said many times, we want to convert it to something, but it may not be economically feasible for a developer to buy it to do it. And I've said multiple times, they should be packaged up. That the RFP, it's these two buildings. We'll put in the RFP what we want, the town hall, whether it be for affordable condominiums or whatever, and it's a package deal, and put it out, and that solves the problem of what to do with town hall. I'm adamant that there would be players and bidders for a project like that to get 12, even at the small, even we left it at the larger lots, which was it 12 lots? To get 12 lots that'll sell for, going by the comps in this report, $700,000 apiece. I'm confident that you would get people that would bid on the whole package with a very specific thing to keep the facade of town hall and get some affordable units in that building. And I think that really needs to be explored before we just sell this piece of gold and worry about who we're going to get to help us with this other piece. I'm adamant that it should be a package deal.
Has there ever been any thought about, prior to an RFP, an actual RFI regarding Memorial Hall?
Just to feel out how people would.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it might be worth it. We've got a good idea for what's out there.
Yeah, a request for information to see if there are developers or not-for-profits that are interested. I mean, the likelihood of a not-for-profit, I mean, I think, quite honestly, Jeff, I think the better approach for Memorial Hall, if the hope is to do something affordable there, is tax increment financing is probably the better approach than trying to tie it to this property, because you may not get the right developer that wants to do a 17-unit development that may not be the right developer to actually do something that makes sense for affordable, and likewise, the person that wants to do, or the developer, something affordable may not be the right developer for over here. So I think on an RFI basis, and I would actually recommend that, and I know that's not the agenda item, but the previous item that we had talked about on the tech proposal is possibly a RFI before we ever make any decision of, is that a bypass road or is there anything else that should be done there? I mean, the visioning that was done through the mass development grant that we got, I think it was interesting, but some of the feedback we got kind of made me scratch my head. A lot of the feedback was, wow, that would be a great place for a community center. Well, we're building a new community center right down the road. Thank you for the funding for that, town. So I actually think an RFI on that property would be a good way to gauge not just developers, and I think there will be some developers, but also groups like Habitat, other not-for-profits that are around the Merrimack and North Shore area that see the attractiveness of doing affordable housing in Middleton, because we're a very central location.
Right, if it's economically
I like
feasible,
that
Yeah.
I'm fine with that.
And the
I just don't wanna
economic
sell this
feasibility
one.
may be on a tax increment financing, which is something that we can talk about in an RFI, is if there was TIF included, if there was not TIF included, what would that, would there be interest in? What would you be interested in?
I'm fine with that as long as we have a final
I
plan
agree.
for that building before if somebody comes along and wants to do something with town hall and it works and we get some affordable housing, then I'm fine, we can sell this on its own. I just don't want to sell this first and then say, gee, we should have packed, now what are we going to do with town hall? And we have no carrot, we just have the stick, we don't have the carrot. So I'm fine with the way Brian laid it out, as long as we don't offer this parcel up for sale until we have some interest or a plan for that one. And if there is no plan, then go back to the idea of package them up and see what we
So
get.
as the complex is getting, built out and we're getting closer to the date where buildings, people will be moving in, I think it's, time
We're
to
gonna have to really think.
reactivate, the sort of, the select board acting as sort of a subcommittee of the whole, started discussing what will happen with these buildings. We met prior to you coming, just around the time that Andy announced that he would be leaving, so we've put it off. Now you've been here a year, you've gotten sort of the lay of the land. I think it's time to start talking about that, those dispositions, the issues of, Memorial, how do we look at Memorial Hall, how do we look at the fire station, the old town hall, and
CON.
So, yeah, so we should sort of,
And not just how we look at, I mean, there's gonna be costs involved, so when that fire station closes, I mean, I think we all understand what we wanna see done with the fire station. I think there's some points that need to be, defined there. There's gonna be a cost to do that, and that cost is gonna be borne by the town. Mothballing Memorial Hall until something is done there, whether it's a year, 3 years, there's gonna be a cost involved. Mothballing the old town hall until whatever happens there, there's gonna be a cost there. And the same with the police. I mean, I think the likelihood of the police station being sold makes the most sense, because there's nothing adjacent to
already
that,
talked about
that
that.
land. But I think we need to now start making some more concrete decisions, to your point, Costa. But I think, again, and Jeff, I don't disagree with you of, there's a carrot and stick here, but we have costs for the current municipal project that you guys are doing a really good job, like tonight's decision of not doing the non-permeable parking. Hey, we'd love it, but 300,000, we could probably keep that in abeyance or just not spend it. Taking the old fire station down is not gonna be a cheap cost. Mothballing the other two buildings is not gonna be a cheap cost. Those three costs involved are gonna far eclipse whatever we could get for the police station if we sold that building. So now we're talking about new investment, new dollars spent. I'd also like to get Locust Street back on the tax rolls.
Let's not let's come up with a plan and not
No, I go,
mothball.
but.
Let's do something with it.
But, I mean, the likelihood of, you know, when the folks leave Town Hall, Memorial Hall, leave the old Town Hall, leave the police station, and leave the fire station, at some point, like, we have to start mothballing, whether they're turning into something else or being sold.
Unless
There's
you would have put something out now for Locust Street and the Town Hall, which gives the affordable housing, which we all know we need, and we've all talked about putting in Town Hall, and having somebody ready to go, to close on both properties with something that we come up with, and just get it done.
I mean, if
We've had the
I'm not,
conversation.
I don't know if tying the two properties together is in the best interest. I'm not disagreeing with the
Other towns
approach
have
that
done
you're
it.
taking, but I think there's other ways to make, if the decision is that Memorial Hall is utilized for affordable housing, I think there's other ways to make that attractive to the right developer that has experience and know-how of rehabbing existing buildings into affordable and managing a process as such.
Then let's.
The RFI, the
if
RFI
you
will
Let's
do
get
do
that
it.
out
If-
right now. Let's
if you do it
stop talking
through
about
the-
it, and let's see if we can find someone.
If you do it through the RFI, then you're gonna have the contractors that are willing to come in and see exactly what we do want to see there, but we're not going to be tied to it, because I wouldn't want to get tied into putting both those in the same basket if it's not going to work to the benefit of the town. I'm not convinced that putting both those buildings, the town hall and Locust Street, together is going to be in our best
Well, we'll see.
interest.
We'll see if anybody's
It may.
interested in
I
Town Hall
mean,
on its own. We'll find out.
We can write in the RFI pretty much anything you want to write, however you want to write it. And we can see what comes in for responses from the RFI. I love the idea, Brian. I'm glad you came up with that.
I think we could satisfy everybody here, laying out, saying, all right, here's scenario one, just Locust Street by itself with some of these conditions. Here's Memorial Hall by itself with some conditions. Here's both
here's-
of them together. Tell us what you think of each of them. Like, what do you propose? And I think that will be your answer. You may find it's limiting. You may find that someone finds it attractive that specializes in that type of deal. I mean, really, who knows?
And
don't
we
know
may
until we-
get a
yeah.
contractor that says, absolutely no way, I want Locust Street and not Town Hall.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
to
they'll all
get
want that,
4
right.
units in Town
Then you'll
Hall
find-
and the cost to repair your investment is going to be.
It's gonna be a
so
it's gonna be a
absorbent.
not-for-profit that's gonna do that. It's not gonna be a
And
standalone developer.
Super if that works. Super if that works.
So,
We all agree, we'll go out for the RFI.
okay, so I'll start drafting something together. If I'm being realistic, I'd say late October, given current workflow. Possibly early November, but I'll shoot for late October.
So that'll be for a specific use, or what'll that be for?
I'm just gonna I'll bring all of you.
We'll have a draft.
I'll bring some bones, and then we can build on that. Just as some starting point, something to build on.
Is that something that would be worthwhile to have a conversation with Mass Development again about potential
If they have-
technical assistance?
I would love that. So I mean, I'm open to it and seeing maybe what
I'll talk to
they-
their chief of staff if you want.
That would be great. We can definitely do it in-house, but that's a
Well,
specialized.
that's what they do.
Yeah, so I'm happy to get the help. And so one other, I guess, outstanding question here before moving on that is the 12 lot thing and the 17 lot thing. So there's a timeline component here. So if you are interested in exploring the zoning change, that means us having to try to link it up with an annual town meeting. Also keeping in mind that we aren't leaving Memorial Hall until early 2026. And so if you're linking these things together, it's going to have to be with the understanding that they would probably start. And if somebody were interested in a package deal in that way, they would start at Locust Street and then finish at Memorial Hall. And you'd have to put in some type of clawback provision that if they don't follow through on that, something happens. So being mindful of that, is there interest in pursuing the zoning change, or at least seeing what it would take to do it? It's easier to not do it, but I think there's value in doing
I
it.
prefer to know what it's gonna take. That's just my opinion.
Like what the process would be, and
Well, we kind of know what it would be.
Well, we do. I mean, outside of, we've all talked about trying to get some kind of more affordable housing up there.
I mean, if our goal
$2
is affordable,
million.
if our goal is affordable, i.e.,
You're right.
we want, again, this is the big A and the small a in affordable. If our goal is to have all of the buildings that are built on Locust Street to be affordable, then the easier process may be,
The zoning.
well, no, to actually put in the RFP when that property is sold certain restrictions. Because as the seller, we can put in those restrictions that state no more than X square footage, no more than
Right,
three
we
bedroom, no more
definitely-
than items like that. That may be easier. Now, we won't get 17 lots and we'll get 12 lots, but that may be an easier process if the decision post RFI is everything gets married together. And your point of timing it of Locust happens first and then Memorial Hall, and if Memorial Hall doesn't happen, then there's a clawback in financials on that piece. I would say if it's going to be a zoning change, we really want to see this in the spring of '25 town meeting, not spring of '26,
Yes.
because then we're absolutely mothballing buildings for several years.
No, it would be spring of '25.
Now,
Next
with this
annual
new
town.
law that passed, could there be duplexes now without regard to the lot size?
oh,
No or yes?
I said that was O. I said O. I don't know. I'd have to go and look. Yeah.
No, duplexes, no. However, accessory units, yes.
Right.
And as I understand the law, I'm not an attorney, nor do I play one on TV, but my understanding is that you cannot have language that would, like homeowners association language or any other language that would supersede that state law. You know, there could be items around parking, and items like that, but we could not, I don't believe we as a town could put in language that says, we're gonna sell Locust Street, but no ADUs.
Right.
You're absolutely correct. We can't. do
And
that.
there couldn't be a homeowners association at that Locust Street property that says no ADUs.
So in the spirit of that, there actually may be value in doing the smaller lots. in a roundabout way, you're taking that off the table, I would think.
Which brings us back to zoning.
Yeah.
Well,
Or is it the opposite?
Right,
no, I mean,
right.
you know, you could, you know, just like be 12 lots, current zoning. It's just that most of it has to stay natural. So what the developable parcel is small. I mean, it might be a 40,000 square foot lot, but if 30,000 can't be disturbed, you effectively have a 10,000 developable lot. But the actual lot is 40,000.
What did that gain you, Costa?
It helps, it keeps more open space. It fits into the smaller houses to be more affordable. Because then, you know, you could have 2,500 square foot house, and then a pool house, a pool, a racquetball court, a this, a that, and you end up with a property that's worth $2.5 million.
So is what you're describing effectively putting in a deed restriction that something like
It is a deed.
two-thirds of?
Yeah,
It is a
well,
deed
if we're gonna say you're gonna, you know, you can't build more than 2,500 square foot house to keep
That's
it
a
more
deed
affordable,
restriction right there.
right? You also limit, you know, how much of the lot can be disturbed.
But like you said, Costa, you could
can
put
do
a,
that.
still put a 4,500 square foot house, 15, 15, 15.
Well, that's why you put the finished area restriction, right? 2,500, 2,800, 2,200, whatever, you know, it is. That gets you a house that's sold for $1.2 million, which is not that far off our median house, which is almost $1 million.
To rezone, how do you avoid spot zoning?
Well, this would be, I think we had talked about this a little bit, it would be an overlay. So
It'd be what?
Again, just an
overlay.
overlay. Look, I want to look into what you're describing, and talk with Jay Tallerman about it a little bit and see what it would look like, and I think in tandem, I'll lay out what the process would look like if you were to try to do some type of overlay and bring them back. Because there's a lot of good feedback here, but a lot of question marks that I want to nail down before I say, like, yeah, let's do it. Okay. So to be continued, I suppose, next
be.
meeting? Okay.
Okay. Next on the agenda is to review the application of JY Inc., DBA Venom Liquors at 232B South Main Street.
Thank you.
Is this a public hearing?
So, good evening, Jill Mann here on behalf of JY Inc., the applicant in connection with the transfer of liquor license. Here with me tonight is Jay Patel. He is the principal of this company. Also here tonight is Samantha and John Miller. They are the existing, or current owners, I should say, of Venom. This is actually, you know, it's a good thing. We're going to be transitioning from the Millers to the Patels, and it's kind of like a family transition almost, because Jay, obviously his parents, you know, Rita and Mukesh have been in town for a very long time, and they want their son to stay here, grow, and actually develop his business in town. And this is kind of the first step for that. And what's really great is the Millers, you know, they've known the Patel family for a long time, and, you know, they brought Venom to Middleton, and John's going to stay on for a while and actually help Jay with the business. So I just wanted to kind of give you that kind of broad picture of why this is all happening. So Jay actually, you know, was going to Bentley. He's getting his degree from Bentley, and has been working to, you know, really learn the purchasing side of a wine and all alcohol business, and that's what he's been doing all summer. And he's been working with his uncle Amit Patel, as well as, you know, obviously his parents, and then also John, who will stay there to try and help him, you know, learn the wine business. Maybe he's going to become a real enophile, right? My husband would love that. So they really want to be able to have this business stay in Middleton and grow in Middleton. As you know, the Millers moved from one location to another to get bigger business, bigger location, which was a great change. We submitted an application for Jay. It included, the asset purchase. It included the good standing certificates. It included the CV for Jay. It provided you with the information relative to financing. And I thought that maybe tonight, and Jay's prepared to discuss it with you, if you have any questions for him about, what he's going to do and how he intends to run the business, I think he'd love to participate. But if you actually have any questions about that application that I could answer, I'd love to engage. And that's really it.
Right, so, Mike, how do you see the business changing under your ownership?
Yeah, so I guess my plan for the business is to expand it from mostly just a wine shop. I guess like right now when you go in, there is an amazing wine selection, but it does lack in terms of like liquor. So I guess my biggest goal is to just bring a large variety of liquor to the establishment.
So it becomes just another run-of-the-mill package store.
Well, no, because they're still focusing on the wine, and that's where Jonathan comes in and is staying.
So, all right, but that's for a limited time. So how much wine experience? One of the things I've loved about Venom is you go in there and you talk about, okay, I need a wine for this occasion or, for that, meal, and then John, gives you, something. It is not just another run-of-the-mill liquor store.
And honestly, I had the same reaction, and I don't disagree. And I think that's why they've asked John to stay on. I mean, quite frankly, no offense, a pure wine store can't really financially make it. You really need to expand to be able to profit in this market. Am I wrong? It's been a brutal ride.
Yeah, no, I think
And
part of
that's
it's
why
that,
it's been tough.
I think part of it's that, part of it is, and I've watched Venom grow from when the two of them came in originally
Right,
for their
remember?
first license, and I remember thinking at the time, a wine shop, is that really going to work? And I remember asking questions, and I said, are you going to have anything else like cheese or like what's the? And you were like, no, trust me. And I watched you guys grow, and there were growing pains along with that. One of the things that was the growing pain was the size of the facility you were in. So you moved to a bigger facility, which what became evident to me and others, especially when this board awarded you a full liquor license, was for that reason, is what you were missing was the ability to sell alcohol. There was beer and wine, and I get, in my limited knowledge, is to be successful selling beer, you have to sell large quantities of it, like very large quantities. In wine, there is certain wine with certain big national sellers. I won't totally say who that is. It's very hard now to compete with that. The reason why I voted in favor of expanding your liquor license when that opportunity came up was the ability to expand Venom beyond beer and wine in a way that would actually make it financially sustainable so that we would still have a wine shop in town. And I'm not tooting your horn here, but when I tell people I'm from Middleton, the first comment I usually get is Richardson's. The second comment I used to get was Maggie's Farm, and more often than not, it's Venom. So people are coming here for the wine, and in talking with John and Samantha before, I think the hope was to not just be the craft beer and the craft, well, not craft, but different types of wines that you won't get at those totally other places, would be, bourbons and whiskeys and others. But to make that work, you also have to sell regular vodka and regular.
You can do both.
Yeah, you can do both.
Isn't that, I think, and if you'd like John to speak to it, because Costa, we understand, I like to go in, I like that element too, and we're hoping that Jay, who's young, is going to develop into that.
You know,
He asked for great questions, though. Jay's come in and asked us, what are the wines that go with this? What are the wines that sell? What are the wines I should keep? He's already curious about that. I mean, that's what he's going towards. That's what he wants to learn. You know, it took as many years as it took for John, but I didn't have that background.
But there's a lot of square footage there as well.
There's a lot of square footage and
That we're not using.
that we're not using. That's where it needs to expand. That's, our shop can continue. Venom can continue. It just needs to get more.
Excuse me.
And they have that to offer. We don't. That's, you know.
He's also going to be inheriting a sales force that I've handpicked over the last 10 years. Two of my sales rep I've known for 32 years. And these guys, they want to build off of what they already have. They don't want to just become a liquor store and lose everything that we're earning right now. You want to retain that and build off of it. And that was, you know, you have to realize it's a personal thing for me too. I built this damn place. Some of these board members were on the very first meeting and grilled me then.
That means I've been on the board too long.
No, he asked me about Greek wine, and I'm like, oh, Jesus. But which I did bring in, by the way. I fulfilled that promise. But it's just, you know, it's been 10 years, and I've been working 360 days a year. That's not an exaggeration, by the way. I take 6 days off a year, mostly because 3 of them legally I have to. And we had to decide, do we want to re-up for another 5 years, because that's what we're looking at. And that was, I don't know, I'm not getting any younger. So I think it's a fantastic opportunity for both of us. And like I say, he's inheriting a sales force that's second to none. I don't put up with, we don't have liquor salesmen, order takers. We have people that come in and tell me about new things, in liquor too, by the way. And not all of it is to my liking, but they sell this new ghost tequila with ghost pepper. It's on fire, no pun intended. And I tried it. I thought it was awful. I wouldn't, but it's a business.
So, my comments were not really that I'm opposed to the transfer. I'm just disappointed that it will be changing.
Yeah, and believe me, it's going to be a big change for me because my car goes in one direction every day, and we moved, but I can see the old store from the new store. So it's it's going to be a massive change for me, but it's time. It's another 5 years. I'm going to be over 60. So
It's definitely bittersweet. It's the right direction for the store to see the store expand. It'll make us happy to see it happen.
And I expect the expansion it's going to take some capital.
Exactly. We could have done it ourselves, but I don't want to work 360 days a year anymore. And it's.
And I knew they could.
Yeah, and it's believe me, it's in very good hands.
I have a question for Jay, something that you alluded to. So, Joe mentioned, are you still in school?
Yes, it's my final year.
So, you mentioned you work 360 days a year. How much time going to school are you going to be able to devote to this and be in the store?
Yeah, so I've kind of set myself up from the past few years where I kind of have a light course load for this coming year, just due to having credits from high school and taking classes over the summer. In addition to that, I have kind of set my classes up on 2 days, so I only have to commute to school for those couple days. And in addition, I have experience working at my parents' store while also doing school. So it's not going to be too much of a challenge for me. It is going to be something new, taking on such a big responsibility. But I definitely think I'm prepared for it. I have the right skills. And it'll just come down to like time management.
Well, I've watched your parents. They work 366 days a year.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And they make their kids work with them. We all have gone to that rich deal, right?
Right.
But you know, that is a great question, because did I not ask the question?
You did.
And he was like, you know what? I'm only 21 years old. I forget what that means in times of time. You know?
Jay, I have a question. When do you graduate?
In May.
Okay. Congratulations.
And that's also why John's going to stay on too. So John's going to not work 360 days. He's going to work, what for him will be part-time, and for Jay will be full-time. So you're going to get actually probably more of an owner presence, because I still consider John, I mean, I think John does too, considers himself an owner, and Jay quite clearly considers himself an owner. And then also Amit is going to be, Amit owns a couple of liquor stores, one up in Hudson, one in North Andover, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got more support as well.
And, but when will this all be finalized, given, you know, the ABCC?
Oh, ABCC's horrible timeline, it probably like 16, I have to tell you, 8 to 16 weeks. I know how that sounds, but
But we were told this
Same thing first.
the very first meeting, when you approved us for beer and wine. People said months. We got it, it was 2.5 weeks.
yeah,
And then the select board came in on their day off and signed it.
I mean, I'm hoping that
So,
I've
I'm
had recent
hopeful.
experience.
Yeah, but the state
That doesn't
moves so
always
much
happen.
slower
Slower
than
than
it
I know.
we did.
I know.
If it happens faster, it does, but you have, this board, and I've set expectations, 8 to 16 weeks.
So sort of, that kind of minimizes the time that you're still in school.
You might be in your final semester by the time it's over.
It's possible.
I hope not for you, but
John, what is your anticipation of staying on board?
Just till
Do you have,
he's up and running and has, you know, we need to set up meetings with all the sales reps. It's not a lot to do. These guys are pros. They've been doing it forever. They know what currently sells at the shop. They also know, quite frankly, what I'm not carrying, and I'm making a mistake by not carrying those items. And that's because I wanted to keep it a nice wine shop and not totally ruin it. But the thing is, you know, times are changing. Total Wine was not open when you approved us the first time. It was close. I remember when they opened up, and we got hurt by it because people drove down there out of curiosity. Most of them never went back because it's like walking into a frickin' Lowe's and you can't find anything. I just want a bottle of Chardonnay and I got to do 10,000 steps to get to it. So some of our customers never came back, no question about it. But a lot of them said, you know, oh yeah, I went down there and I didn't like it. And that's when we were really small, at the old spot. And quite frankly, now I know a lot more. We should have knocked that wall down and backed it up. We had way too much storage and not enough retail floor. But I had never done it before, you know. I didn't know. And, you know, we had a gourmet butcher next to us at the time. That all changed, as you guys know. So, you know, it's, but I think we did really well there, and we did even better the new place. But it's time for me to maybe I'll run for select board. It was the Board of Selectmen when I came in front of you the first time, by the way.
Yeah, and I had all brown hair and more of it.
okay. Are there any other questions from the board?
Not any other questions, Madam Chairwoman. I would make a motion that we approve the transfer of the license and the pledge of collateral for the all alcohol beverages off-premise package store that is currently held by Vinum Wine Shop with manager John Miller, located at 232B South Main Street. And we transfer that to JY Incorporated, doing business as Vinum Liquors, 232B South Main Street, with the manager of record of Jay Patel.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that. But we generally have correspondence from the police chief on the applicant, and there isn't anything, you know, in the packet. So I'm sure it'll be, have
Fine,
no
it's just,
objection.
it's just proper person.
we want condition just upon receipt. I got it.
Yeah.
Yep.
So are you okay with that?
I would also agree with the appropriate review by
Our
the
police chief Sampson.
Sampson.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye as well.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Congratulations.
Enjoy the rest of September, guys. Bye-bye.
Madam Chair.
Pleasure.
Thank you. We'll be by to see you.
If I could recommend taking item 13 out of order so that you can excuse yourself to executive session, not to return. I'd also.
Need item,
Do you want to do 10
10?
first?
Yes, please. And then 13. And then I'll also note, item 11, we are still waiting to hear back from the union, so we're just gonna table that.
table item 11.
Okay, so we're going to move
Item
on
10.
to item 10, acceptance of the Tri-Town School Union Regional Planning Board 2022-2023 final report.
Madam Chairwoman, I move that we accept the final report.
Second.
So the final report basically states that it would not be a good idea for Middleton to merge their schools with Topsfield and Boxford. Is that how you?
No
No.
regionalization.
No, the final report, when they came here, made the presentation, they also made presentations in the other two towns. And this board was, adamant that was not a, good idea. We've heard from 3 of the school committee members that they didn't think it was. They got the same kind of response in the other two towns, maybe not as, committed to not.
They got no's, but not as strong.
Yes, and so that was it. For the committee, it put together the report of all its findings, all the documents that have been created. That's what's in the final report. And at the end, the committee voted to disband because there was nothing more
There's
to
no
do.
recommendation.
Nothing to discuss.
So all we're doing is accepting the final report,
Yes.
not approving a recommendation.
So I did have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're going to take item 13 for updates and announcements out of order.
I just wanted to say thanks to Tracy Mello and Steve Jesse for organizing the opioid awareness vigil last Wednesday. Senator Tarr and Representative Jones were there. They spoke. It was, I think it was a moving event, and it's sad that there were so many flags, but I think, the Tracy Mello and her committee committed to doing what we can to prevent more deaths coming.
I think one of the, I unfortunately was out of town, but I fielded a lot of questions and texts and calls from folks asking what
What
the
for.
purple flags were.
I know.
And when I explained what it was, the overwhelming response was, wow, that's a lot of flags.
And that was just for 1 year.
Yeah,
Right.
and so any opportunity to
Get the word
have a
out.
discussion, remove the stigma around, and just have a conversation. Just the last 2 weeks, I've attended wakes for 2 individuals that have fallen to the same. And sometimes people get immune to when it happens, but when you drive by and you see something like that, it's a stark reminder. So a big thank you to them and others that helped make it a reality in town. And I hope this is something that doesn't have to happen every year, but I also think it's something that should happen every year.
Like you said,
Agreed,
you gotta
yeah.
remove this stigma from it. Nobody wakes up with that thought that that's what they wanna be, there's a lot of reasons why, and it's sad, but yes, thank you, Tracy,
Yeah.
for organizing very much. Any other news or announcements?
Madam Chairwoman, I move that we enter executive session and will not return to open meeting pursuant to General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A6, to consider the purchase, exchange, lease, or value of real property. If you should declare that an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the public body, and this would be South Main Street, parcel 0029-0000-0071. Again, not to return to open session.
Okay, I'll take a roll call. Jeff?
Yes.
Brian?
Yes.
Costa?
Yes.
And myself is a yes.